Hey Buffs, you will not guess who I have the pleasure of standing with today. Before I do the big reveal, I want to tell you a quick story. So picture this, you're out planning a road trip with 4 of your best friends. And each friend has got a different favorite snack, a different taste in music, and they want to do a different route. It sounds chaotic, right? But as today's speaker puts it, B2B buying is exactly like that. But instead of 4 friends, you have 20 different stakeholders, each with their own priorities. And that just means that the old measurement playbook does not work. So who better to talk about this than the one who's shaping how marketers measure success, other than J.O., the head of ads measurement at LinkedIn. Thank you so much for doing this with the Digital Bot.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited because we'll be talking about road trips after this, right?
Yes. Let's start with how every CMO and CFO conversation seems to begin. And that's with show me the impact. Jay, when the question hits the table, what are 3 metrics that you recommend every B2B marketer should lead with?
So this is kind of like trying to pick your favorite child. So it's a little hard, but I'd say 3 that come to mind is, let's start with the one they would care about. What's my return on ad spend? So ROAS, in one shape or another, you need to be able to translate what you're doing into how it drives the goals that the business cares about. Top of the list. The second one is I would say incrementality. Anyone could move a metric at the end of the day if you were to get the cheapest click somewhere, or like you made a really juicy creative that really engaged with the audience, but how does that perform relative to not even being there at all? And so does this really move the needle when it comes to changing my conversion rate, my lead through rate? Does it impact things beyond what that single objective or campaign is running? And so incrementality, prove that to me is like number 2. I think number 3 is some metric around quality. And so, when we think about B2C, everyone can buy toothpaste, everyone can buy a bagel. When we talk about B2B, not everyone has the same weight, voice, or influence when it comes to that deal. And so through that lens, how do we make sure it's not just leads that marketing is producing, but quality leads? And so when you talk to how is marketing contributing to the business, your sales team is saying no longer, MQLs don't matter because it's 1,000 of them, and SQLs you only got 2. You're all speaking the same language. There's an element of quality that's necessary.
I love that, and I love that you ended it with the last one, which is perfect because my next question is around quality. And I know that you've been very vocal about quality over vanity metrics. So I'd love to pick your brain on, for leaders whose dashboards are full of vanity metrics like CTRs and impressions, what's your advice?
It's hard to stay away from metrics that are easy to measure. And I'll start with that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong in and of itself, but when they become your guidance, it's kind of like, back to the analogy, I'm going to look at my speed, or I'm going to look at miles covered to decide, well, how am I progressing? And to an extent, that's okay. But if you've used a GPS system in the last decade, you realize what's the route you pick? The one that has the shortest time to destination.
Yeah.
And so when we look at things like CTR, or we look at like how cheap your impressions can be, are they actually really good indicators of what's happening, right? And so when you're talking to your leadership team, I think it starts with empathy for where they're operating. They care about growth in a meaningful way that is not a singular campaign metric. And so they care about how much pipeline do we influence or drive or accelerate? Are sales cycles getting shorter? Are we getting bigger deals? And from that place, you work backwards. What is the measurement solution or partner I can work with to start connecting the things that I'm doing in flight right now? And that might be as simple as, I'm targeting the key accounts that our sales team care about. And this is how their engagement's going up. But how can I build that bridge between what we do today to what I know that ultimately my C-staff care about as a marketer?
You're clearly telling us that we need to talk about data that matters in terms of quality. And speaking about that, one of the recent updates on LinkedIn, you had mentioned in your caption, measure what matters, triangulate on value, and grow your business. So I'm curious about this because I'd love for you to expand on what triangulation looks like in real life practice.
Sure. So we talked about what you can measure easily versus what you should measure. They are not always the same thing. And so, I think as we move towards trying to measure what matters, you're going to need tools and systems to support you with that.
Yes.
So if you haven't heard the concept before, often you'll hear about the concept of a Measurement Holy Trinity. And that Holy Trinity is when we talk about triangulation is through multiple approaches, you arrive at the same answer or insight. When you think about the Measurement Holy Trinity, it is largely what do you do with aggregate data to inform cross-channel spend? So that's media mix modeling traditionally. What do you do to validate that data in flight in terms of like real time, this is trending towards where I want it to be, and that's attribution. It's a look back as well as it tells you in flight what's happening. And then the third one is causality. How can I prove without a doubt that these tactical changes or my efforts are resulting in lifts when it comes to brand awareness from the targeted accounts I care about or conversion? And so when we have a lot of these conversations in the industry, it tends to be like which one is the best one, but in reality, the combination of those things should add up. And if they don't add up, it's telling you something is wrong here.
Yeah.
And so the analogy I often give, even with talking to a lot of customers, let's make it really simple.
Yeah.
If you are trying to get to be the fittest you've ever been in your life, what should you track? And depending on what's been rolling through your feed, it might be your body fat or it might be weight loss because you're just selling the Ozempic or something else out there. Or it might be how much you move during a given day because they're selling a Fitbit tracker. The truth is, like, if you're trying to get fit, it's a factor of maybe being at the right weight, maybe the right cardiovascular health, all of these things, and you kind of need all of these things to line up. You need many things to point you in the right direction that things are working, and also help you understand what's not. And so when we think about triangulation, is like let's make sure we are leveraging all the tools at our disposal to see that it's working, and then we're tactically getting better every day.
This is amazing advice because not everyone gets to learn what triangulation actually is in real life practice, and we've just got the download on that, and it's a unique perspective because as much as we measure all three as successfully as we can, the customer's purchase journey does not look linear anymore.
That's right.
And since you mentioned cross-channel being one of those aspects within the triangulation, how would you recommend that we measure or attribute success to different channels, especially when the buyer's journey involves about 10 different stops along the way?
Totally. I remember my tennis coach yelling at me in high school, and it was because my number one flaw in improving my tennis game is that I didn't follow through on my swing. And just obsessively. And then I corrected that. And the next thing I had an issue with is I kept staring at the ball. And I thought, keep your eye on the ball, everything will be fine. But the two lessons I draw from that parallels constantly for me is like, sure, you need to keep your eye on the ball, but you need to look where you want to hit the ball, and you should always follow through. So now, how do we apply that to measurement in the holistic sense of, like, if you're doing buyer-centric measurement and buyer-centric marketing, factor in the holistic journey. It shouldn't be last touch. It should absolutely be multi-touch. I don't make multi-million-dollar decisions to purchase B2B products overnight. I might do that because I saw something from my favorite influencer for an iPhone case. I'm not going to do that, risk my career, risk my credibility within an organization to do that. So factor in that this is a long journey and it involves multiple people, right? And then the second thing is like, and that's just following through on the swing.
Yep.
I think second thing is like keeping your eye on where you're trying to get to. It comes back to that value question, right?
Yes.
So everything that I do, I should be trying to optimize towards that main thing, which is like growth. It's pipeline. It's building confidence with my sales team. And so how do I use the tools that are both real time, that's reporting, that's attribution, to give me a signal that I'm moving in the right direction? How do I use bigger tools that need time or focus, which might be testing, experimentation, or maybe media mix modeling, to know that overall I'm going in the right direction? Like this reinforcement of follow through with your swing and keep your eye on the prize of what you want to measure and optimize against is really critical when it comes to how we operate.
Following through with your swing, like how you put it, is a perfect segue to my next portion, because we need a good environment to follow through, and that just means that we've got to embrace the concept and the environment of a clean room. And I would love to ask you about how you recently spoke about building white glove accessible intelligence for customers. So for global leaders listening to this conversation, why does this matter now, and how can they balance privacy compliance with the need for actionable insights?
Sure. I think when we think about compliance or privacy, everyone looks at that primarily as headwinds. And so it looks as that I have to do this exercise of meeting compliance, otherwise I can't operate as a marketer. And there is a degree of truth to that.
Yes.
But what it also enables is something you couldn't do before. Let's say you work in a large company with highly sensitive customer data. You want to be able to use that both for retargeting, but model building on the channels you want to activate on. But you can't share that directly. How do you move forward with that? Clean rooms offer an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Also in gathering insights when you're looking at your data against our graph. And so can we give you professional insights you couldn't glean before? You have an idea of who your ideal customer persona is, but in reality, it's not actually accurate because we can tell you they're coming from a different sector or they're a different buyer group. And so I think number one is just shifting that game to think like, how can this be actually a lever for growth rather than a tax that you have to pay? And so that's like number one. I think number two is it's fragmented and the journey is changing. And like the advent of new consumer experiences, whether it's chat or LLMs, mean that our buyers' behaviors, our future customers' behaviors will shift. And so in that context where we also have privacy and distributed data, I mean, I think it comes upon us like, how do we create bridges not based on individuals, the old way of doing it with every single event or action being the driver for behavior change or marketing change, to how do we look at groups of buyers based on what they're trying to do as intent across all the data we can have access to and leverage into making a more effective strategy. And at the end of the day, like the reason why, like personally, I have a lot of conviction, and a lot of customers I'm talking to that are doing really well have conviction is because it's a buyer-centric approach. Right? And using these new tools that are private compute related, they just simply unblock that in a way that wasn't accessible before and in a durable way because like regulations keep changing.
That's an important framing because it is a buyer-centric framework today, and we definitely need to adapt to the changing purchase journey. And I love all the advice that you just shared with us, Jay. So before we wrap this up, I want to end this with a quick lightning rapid fire. I would love like one-liners or quick answers that just at the top of your head.
Okay.
So the first being most overrated metric in B2B marketing.
Clicks, cost per click. I'd even say like just conversions because they have no element of quality in there. You know, I can get cheap clicks. If someone wants to hire me to triple their click volume and CTR, but there's a big salary attached to it, no problem. I can do that overnight. But there's no quality, so I can get it anywhere I want.
Awesome. Most underrated metric that B2B marketers should be taking to their boardrooms.
I think ROAS. We're afraid to talk about it, and so we have a tendency to talk about specific objectives. This is what I did for brand or demand. I think we should be comfortable talking about ROAS. And if you're an ABM organization, like let's talk about ROAS. How much do we spend to land this deal with this company? And figure out a way to measure that more effectively. That makes you a part of the conversation, makes you a part of the sales team in a way too.
I love that. And ROAS is one of my favorite metrics. It's one of the ways that I've proven to brands that I've worked with that we're driving results. So I love that. The next one is the hardest question that you get from CMOs.
It's usually framed this way. It's we understand where we want to be, but how do we change the way that we currently market and measure and operationalize so that we can move to that next step? If we're talking about like measuring for B2B differently, for example, than B2C, it's a muscle where you have to change so many things about how we set targets, incentivize like marketers for their role. You're asking brand marketers to think holistically and how brand affects demand. This isn't part of the job in many ways. And so where they struggle is like, how do I make that progression within the org? How do I then reframe my role to my exec team? And it's this changing human behavior. That's the hard thing.
Okay. The next one is the future of measurement. Do you think it's going to be rules-based, ML-based, or something entirely new?
Definitely not rules-based, although by future, I'm sure a lot of people will do it still.
Okay.
But it puts logic into the taxes I take. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be causal. All causal. And so even if you have a perspective on a machine learning model, we're all learning together as like an entire world or an industry that models are only as good as the data available to them.
Yes.
And so when you train a model to be better and better and predictive of understanding how to attribute credit, we need to give them the sales data. We need to give them the tactical data. And so causality is what we're really ultimately after. And I think if anything, this change in the tech and AI space allows us to maybe move more aggressively towards that, where it isn't about, trying to reinforce the religion of why what I did was right, but more about finding empirical truth. And I think that's really exciting.
That's amazing. If measurement had one tagline for 2026, what do you think that should be?
Measurement is actionable. I think measurement in itself is a bunch of products and solutions and partners that exist out there, but the sole job is to help you inform a decision. And so, if anything, it should be less about the job of reinforcing something I did before, but how can I do something better?
Awesome. This was exceptionally good, and I'm probably going to quote you on a couple of these insights in my future posts. So thank you so much, Jay. To the buffs, if you don't follow Jay yet, he's on LinkedIn, and his posts on B2B marketing and measurement is a masterclass in itself. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I will just quote Jay on what he just said. Measurement is actionable, and you can take it further with all that Jay just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.